This is Meseches Nazir Daf Dalid. We're holding on Gimel Amid Beis at the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, and yes, Baruch Hashem, we're going to be trying to not only get the shiurim up early, but get back to our daily Chazara, 5-6 minute shiur, speaking out to Shakla V'Tarya, P'siyata Dishmaya. We'll try to keep up to date. Says the Mishnah, Harini Nazir min hachartzanim umin hazagim. If someone says, I'm a Nazir, but he doesn't leave it, he's just a Nazir. He's a Nazir from chartzanim, grape seeds. Umin hazagim, from grape skins. Umin hateglachas, from hair cutting. Umin hatama, from becoming impure tameh. Harei zeh Nazir, the halacha is he's a Nazir. And not only is he a Nazir, v'chol deikduki Nazir salaf. He's a full-fledged Nazir. Even though he only mentioned Chartzanim, Zogin, Teglachas, Toma, he didn't mention Yayin, he didn't mention grapes. He only mentioned certain nuances of Naziros. Still says the Mishnah, the halacha is that he has the status of a full-fledged Nazir. Says the Gemara, Mas Nisan, this Mishnah, Zolki Rav Shimon, is not like the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Why not? The Tanya learns in a Brayso Rav Shimon Aimer, says Rav Shimon, Einoi Chayif. This is a general statement of Rav Shimon, a statement of Rav Shimon, which in reality we've actually learned in Nidarim on Daf Dalid. Yes, in the beginning of Nidarim, just taking a peek at the Meseres Hashas, that says Rav Shimon, you're not Chayiv at sheyadir mikulam. You're only a Nazirus if you said, I'm a Nazir from each and every one of the entities that you're forbidden to eat. V'Rabbanan amri. Say the Rabbanan no. Afilu loy nazar elo bechad min hoin. Even if he only said he's a Nazir from one of all the dinim of Nazirus, have a Nazir. So says the Gemara, our Mishnah, that says that when you said some of the entities of Nazirus, you have a full-fledged Nazirus, is clearly like the Rabbanan, that even if you said one thing, the entire Nazirus is upon you. Says the Gemara, Mai Taima de Rav Shimon. Where does Rav Shimon get this thing that you're only a Nazir if you said each and every entity? Amar Kra, says the Torah, Mikol Shayas, Migefen Hayayin Mechartzanim Vadzog. Says the Torah that you're anything that's made of the grapevine, Migefen because she asked, gefen hayayin, and then it says michartzanin va'ad zog. So therefore, we see in the pasuk, says Rav Shimon, that when the pasuk discusses gefen hayayin, it goes on and it says michartzanim ad zog, including everything. And from here, Rav Shimon learns out that it has to be a detailed list in order to be a Nazir from everything. The Rabbanan disagree. My Taima Amar Kra, says the Rabbanan, I have a different pasuk. Says the pasuk miyayin v'sheichar yazir. Says the pasuk that you're becoming a Nazir from what? Yayin and sheichar. Doesn't say all the intricacies. Says the Rabbanan, as long as you have some level of the Nazirus mentioned, everything is ulcer. And now in the classical Gemara game of ping pong, says the Gemara of Rav Shimon Nami Yoksev Miyayin V'Sheichar Yazir. What does Rav Shimon do with the Chachamim's pasuk? What does he do with the fact that the Torah does say a form of Nazirus from Yayin and Sheichar, not speaking out each and every entity? According to Rav Shimon, there's only Nazirus if you see each and every entity. Answers the Gemara, Ahomi Baile, you know what that pasuk is needed according to Rav Shimon? Le'esar Yayin Mitzvah, Ki Yayin Arishos. Says Rav Shimon, we need a special pasuk to teach me. Not only is the Nazir not allowed to have a regular Yayin, a casual, delightful drink of wine, but he's also not allowed to have Yayin Mitzvah. Says the Gemara, Maihi. What is Yayin Mitzvah? Kedushasa v'avdalta, making Kiddush and making Havdalah. So says the Gemara, that's what Rav Shimon does with the pasuk of the Rabbanan, that the pasuk says miyayin v'sheichar yazir, to include an extra din. What does it come to include? It comes to include that even when Nazir is not allowed to have Kiddush and Havdalah. Continues the Gemara as we turn over to Daled Amud Aleph, and the Gemara asks a fascinating question. Now, in truth, the question that the Gemara asks at face value is a little bit difficult to read, as the Mefarshim on the side of the page point out. But let's take it slowly. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Hare Mushba v'oimeid mehar Sinai. Now the reason why this question of the Gemara is difficult is because this phraseology in the Gemara of Mushba v'oimeid mehar Sinai is a phraseology that we have many times in Shas. But over here it has a different meaning. Usually it means that how can you make a neder? You're already included in a neder. But that's not what it means over here. What it means is it's bitmiyah, as the Rishonim here speak out. Hari mushva v'oimeid mehar Sinai. How is he able to, why do we need a specific pasuk permitting wine of Kiddush? There's no obligation to have wine of Kiddush. What does that mean? There's an obligation, so there's a biblical obligation, as we see Rashi, who's not Rashi, that says, Zachar es yom HaShabbos likadshay. However, when it comes to doing it on wine, we learn out from a different source that's a din d'Rabbanan to do it on wine. We all know why you can make Kiddush on bread. So says the Gemara, why do I need a special pasuk according to Rav Shimon to teach me you're even allowed to have wine of Kiddush? What do you mean? There's no din d'oraisa to have wine of Kiddush. Ella, so says the Gemara, you're right. You know what we need? Ki hada amai Rava. We're referring to the case, that which Rava said, Shavua she'eshte. Someone makes a Shavua, I'm going to drink wine. V'chazar v'amar. And then he says, Hareini Nazir. Then he says, I'm a Nazir. So there's a Shavua, a din d'oraisa, that what? I have to drink wine. Then he says, I'm a Nazir, which means what? I can't drink wine. Asya Niziros Chayla al Shvua. And therefore, Rav Shimon learns the extra pasuk of the Chachamim Yain v'Sheichar al Tishta teaches me that the Niziros is even Chal on the Shvua. Maybe one would think, how is the Niziros Chal on the Shvua? You have a din d'oraisa to drink. Says the Torah, special pasuk, if you're a Nazir, you're not allowed to drink. So throws the Gemara the ping pong ball back 4 lines down. Da'alam at Aleph. V'Rabbana nami haimi baile lesser yayin mitzvah ki yayin harishos. According to the Rabbanan as well, that pasuk needs to teach me that you're also of yayin mitzvah like yayin of rishos. So how can the Chachamim, meaning which we just explained to me like the case of a Shvuah, so how can the Chachamim use this pasuk to teach me that even if you make a neder from a Nazir from one entity, you have a full Naziros like the din in our Mishnah? Answers the Gemara in Kelim Makra, mi yayin my v'sheichar shmas mina tarti. The Rabbanan learn out that the extra word of mi sheichar teaches me this extra din. Says the Gemara, so what does Rav Shimon say? For Rav Shimon, hainu time with the kasiv sheichar. According to Rav Shimon, why does the Torah delineate beer? La alufa sheichar lemikdash. You know what it teaches me? It teaches me a din from the Beis HaMikdash. Tichsif says in the Torah, yain v'sheichar al tishta, wine and beer you shall not drink. Atu b'nachli yitach you and your children with you. Ma gabe nazir. And from here we learn out, just like when it comes to Nazir, 10 lines down, the first line is Nazir. Yain hu delisar aval shar mashkin loi. What is forbidden? Wine, but not other drinks. Afkabe mikdash nami yain hu delisar aval shar mine mashkin. Shar mashkin, I'm mishtakrin loi. When it comes to Beis HaMikdash, what are you not allowed to drink when you enter to the Beis HaMikdash? Wine. But other intoxicating beverages, you're allowed to drink before one goes into the Beis HaMikdash. And comments the Gemara, this is Ulafuke Mid Rav Yehuda. This din that you're allowed to enter in to the Beis HaMikdash with other intoxicating drinks is not like Rabbi Yehuda de Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer teaches Rabbi Yehuda Achal Devela Ki'ilos. If someone eats a pressed fig from Ki'ilah, a certain fig which has intoxicating powers to it, or Vishasa Dvash, he drinks honey, v'chalav, and milk, which are as well intoxicating beverages. V'nichlas lemikdash, it goes into the Beis HaMikdash, says Rav Yehuda, chayiv. So this din is not like Rabbi Yehuda. So says the Gemara, another teretz, what Rav Shimon would say, how Rav Shimon will learn. Iba Yisema Rav Shimon lastly Isser Chal al Isser. Another way of learning is that Rav Shimon holds that one Isser is not going to be Chal on another Isser. The Tanya has learned in a Brayso of Shimon Omer, Hoichal Nevela B'Yom Kippurim, a Gemara that we've seen already. If someone eats, we saw this in Psachim, someone eats Nevela on Yom Kippur, Potter, he is Potter. Again, this is a second teretz according to Rav Shimon, what he does with the actual word of sheichar. As we said, yayin v'sheichar al teish. So the first answer was to include the sheichar in the Beis HaMikdash. Now says the Gemara, a second teretz, Rav Shimon says, Leslie Isser chal al Isser. And we learned this out from a brisa that says, Rav Shimon Omer Navela b'Yom Kippurim, you are potter. Now obviously it doesn't mean you are a potter entirely. What it means is you're potter to bring the carbon chatas, and the reason here being is because we have Rav Shimon learns that the extra isser of eating on Yom Kippur is nachal. Since the animal is already asr as an avela, the extra isser of eating on Yom Kippur does not chal. And that's what he learns out from V'sheichol Rabbanan. Says the Gemara back to the Rabbanan Nami Aksev, Mikol Asher Yaseh Migefen Hayayin. Anything that is made from the Gefen Hayayin. This is the pasuk in which Rav Shimon learned that you need to say explicitly each part of the Naziras. Amnucha Rabbanan Hasam Limud Al Isur Nazir. This is teaching us a din in Naziros. What's the din? Shemitztarfin zeh zeh. Says the Chachamim, this pasuk teaches a unique din about Naziros, that the different parts of a grape, the different parts of entities combine for what? Combine to make one obligated in eating the requisite amount to be chayiv. For Rav Shimon, less leitzira, Rav Shimon disagrees with this din, as we'll see more in Maseches Makos and Mirza Hashem. Titania Rav Shimon Omer, and obviously it's interesting because you'd think you see this in Nazirus, in Nazir, as this is a din about Nazirus, but this is really more a global din about shiurim being mitzaref, and says Rav Shimon kol shu lamakis lo amru kizayis ella le'inyin carbon. Says Rav Shimon, the din of kizayis, the din that is a minimum quantity to obligate oneself, is a din in carbon. But in order to be obligated in malchus, it's on any amount that one eats. So that is the machlekes Rav Shimon and the Chachamim. Our Mishnah going like the din of the Chachamim, not like Rav Shimon. And now we continue with the Mishnah on the bottom half of Dalet Amud Aleph, in which we get into a new topic. Now, just to preface, it's going to seem a little vague and we don't know what's going on, but that's going to come back in a moment. In a moment, we're going to learn two Mishnayos, and the second Mishnah is really going to explain more about the first din of the Mishnah. So hold on tight and everything will become clear. Says the Mishnah, again, about halfway down, Dalet Amud Aleph, Hareini kishimshain. Someone says, I am like Shimshain Agivar. Or he says, Ki ben Manoyach. I am like Ben Manoyach. And obviously anyone that knows, Shimshin was Ben Manoyach. Ki Baal Delilah. Or if someone says, I am like the husband of Delilah, who is Shimshin's wife. Ki mi sha'akar Delasais Aza. Or if he says, I'm like one that was Akar, that tore out the gates, the Delasais of Aza. Or Kamisha Nekru, Pelishtin as enough. Or the one that the Pelishtin gouged out, took out his eyes, Harei Zeh Nazir Shimshin. So when someone says any of these terminologies, the takeaway is that he has the din of a Nazir Shimshin due to the fact that that which he's saying are all terms of Nazirashim. Now, what is a Nazir Shimshon? We know Shimshon was a Nazir his entire life. That is the din that we're going to learn in the next Mishnah. Stay tuned in a minute. But before we get to what is the din of a Nazir Shimshon, first asks the Gemara, Lama li lamisti kol alin. Why do we have to explicate all the different cases in the Mishnah, all the different parts of the Nazir Shimshon? Says the Gemara Srichi. So the Mishnah is really teaching us a chiddush. If someone just says, I am like Shimshin, which Shimshin? Hava Amina, Shimshin Achrina. Maybe it doesn't mean to be a Nazir Shimshin. Maybe it means a different type of Shimshin. Kamash Malan, Keben Manoyach. Vitane Keben Manoyach. And if he just said Keben Manoyach, Hava Aminika Demitkari Achi. I would have thought that there is someone else who's called like this. And again, we don't know this is talking about Shimshon HaGibar, Kamash Milan, Kibal, Dalila, Ukamisha Nekru, Pelishtin, Einav, and that teaches us whom we are referring to. And that is the reason why the Mishnah had to go by and Mishnah had to list all the different details. And now we continue, and this is the part that's going to explain really the previous Mishnah. Says this Mishnah, Mabi Nazir Oilam Nazir Shimshin. What is this entity of Nazir Shimshin, and what is a Nazir Oilam? And what is the difference of a Nazir Oilam and a Nazir Shimshin? Nazir Oilam, so says the Mishnah, if someone says he's a Nazir forever, the halacha is, Hichbit Sairo, if his hair becomes heavy, he can't bear having so much hair, Mekel Bitar. He's got a light in the hair with a razor. He can't get a proper haircut, but he could use a razor just to trim his hair. And umevi shalosh behemais. And the halacha is, and he brings 3 behemais, which are the karbanos of a nazir, when he trims his hair. Ve'im nitma. And if a nazir oilam becomes tamei, impure, maybe karban tama, he brings the karban for becoming tamei like a regular nazir. However, Nazir Shimshin, if someone is a Nazir Shimshin, if his hair becomes heavy, he's not able to lighten it, he's not able to trim it at all. Ve'im nitma, and if he becomes impure, mevi karban tuma, he does not bring a karban tuma. So the Mishnah just delineated the differences between a Nazir Oilam and a Nazir Shimshin. The Gemara now comes along, and the Gemara says, as I mentioned, a lot of these dinim seem a bit backwards. Nazir Oilam, man bechar shmei. Who mentioned a Nazir Oilam? It's like out of the blue, Nazir Oilam. What's the difference in A and B? We don't know what A and B are. Says the Gemara, Chasurei mechsera v'hachi katani. Says the Gemara, there are unspoken dinim in the Mishnah, and we have to add in some words, and then everything will become clear. Again, Chasurei mechsera v'hachi katani. Says the Gemara, if someone says, I'm a Nazir forever, Harez and Nazir, they throw in the word over here, Nazir Oilam, then he has a din of a Nazir Oilam. And now, Ma bein Nazir Oilam, the Nazir Shimshin. So the previous Mishnah mentioned this entity called Nazir Shimshin. Now we know this thing called the Nazir Oilam. So what are the differences between the two? And we explain, Nazir Oilam ichbetzar mekel betar. Umevi shalosh behemus. Vim nitma mevi karban tama. Whereas Nazir Shimshin, last line, ichbetzar einoi mekel betar. He's not able to lay in his hair as we turn over to Dalid Amid Beis. Ve'einoi mevi karban tama. So those are the differences, and that is the Chasurei Mechsera. We have to add in those critical words in our Mishnah that there is an entity called a Nazir Oilam, and if one says he is a Nazir Oilam, then he has a din of a Nazir Oilam, and then with that we continue and explain the differences between a Nazir Oilam and a Nazir Shimshin. And now we are on Daled Amid Beis, in which the Gemara continues and asks on the din in the Mishnah that it says a Nazir Shimshin does not bring a karban if he becomes tamei. So those words, if he becomes tamei, he doesn't bring a karban. Says the Gemara, and the Gemara infers from there, karban hu deloi maisi. Sounds like he doesn't have to bring a karban. Avol niziros chayil Allah, but it sounds like niziros still applies to him, and he's not able to become tamei to a human corpse. Again, if the Mishnah says if he becomes tamei, he doesn't bring the karban, clearly implying that he's not allowed to become tamei. So says the Gemara, Mani Mas Nisan. Who is the opinion in the Mishnah that a Nazir Shimshin is never able to become tamei from a mace? Loi Rabbi Yehuda, ve'loi Rabbi Shimon. Tanya, we learned in a brisa 3 lines down. Daled Amid Beis. Rabbi Yehuda, Imer says Rabbi Yehuda, Nazir Shimshin is muter l'tam l'meisim. Why? We we find that Shimshon became Tameh. So Rav Yehuda learns a Nazir Shimshon has very unique halachos. He's even allowed to become Tameh Meis. So clearly our Mishnah is not like Rav Yehuda. Rav Shimon Aimer, Areini Nazir Shimshon Loi Amar Klum. Rav Shimon argues on the whole premise. There's no such thing as a Nazir Shimshon. Why not? Shaloi Matzinu B'Shimshon Sheyitzias Naziros Mipev. Because Shimshon Agibar never articulated, never took upon himself to become a Nazir. Rather, Shimshon was a Nazir from birth. So says Rav Shimon, there's no entity of a Nazir Shimshon at all. So asks the Gemara that our Mishnah has no source. Mani, who is the opinion in our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda. If it's Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Afilu Chatchila. Rabbi Yehuda learns you're allowed to become Tameh if you're Nazir Shimshon. Omastisa Gatani Im Nitma. If you became Tameh, clearly implying you're not allowed to. Rabbi Shimon, Amar Lo Chayli Ani Naziris. Rav Shimon learned that Naziris is Nachal. Klal, there's no such thing. So asks the Gemara, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? We're having a difficulty. It seemingly is neither Rabbi Yehuda nor Rabbi Shimon. Continues the Gemara 10 lines down. First word line is Klal and answers, La'olam. Really, I'll tell you, Rabbi Yehuda he. Really, it's Rabbi Yehuda. And because it said with regard to Nazir Olam im nitma, Tani nami gabi Nazir Shimshon im nitma. Meaning, really the wordage in the Mishnah is not precise. Really, the Mishnah agrees like Rav Yehuda that you're allowed to become Tameh lichatchila. There's no problem. Like Rav Yehuda learns because Shimshon Agibar became Tameh. Why did the Mishnah say im nitma? Because of the other part of the Mishnah. So that is the Tan of our Mishnah could be Rav Yehuda. Suggests the Gemara. This machlok is Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda. Rav Shimon says there's no such thing as a Nazir Shimshon. Rav Yehuda says he's allowed to become Tameh Meis. Leima plebelukta dahani tanai. Let's say this machlokes Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon is a machlokes of the following Tanoim kamifliki. Nan, 15 lines down. First word in the line is kamifliki. We learned in the Mishnah, Harei alai kibichar. If someone says that this kikar, this loaf of bread is forbidden to me, like a bachar. And this really brings us back to that which we learned at the beginning of Nedarim. Something called the matvis bedavar hanader. That when I make a neder, has to be made aser like something else that could be made aser. Is a bachar an entity which is made aser? No. A bachar is an entity which is born with kedusha. So what is the status if someone wants to make this item into a neder, into a forbidden item like a bachar? A bachar being an entity which no one made aser, but rather was born that way. So we have a machlokes. Rabbi Yaakov Aiser. Rabbi Yaakov says that it's aser like the bachar, and Rabbi Yosi says no, it is matir. So suggests the Gemara, what is this machlokes Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yosi? My love, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda by us that said you're allowed to be Tameh Meis L'chatchila, Savar Lo Rav Yaakov, to Amar Loi Be'inan Davar HaNadir. Rabbi Yehuda who says there is an entity called Nazir Shimshon, even though Nazir Shimshon himself never articulated the Nazirus, never said this Nazirus like a Davar HaNadir, like something that is forbidden. Similarly, if someone says, I want to be a Nazir Shimshon, saying Nazir Shimshon, Shimshon was not something that became Aser, something that was born Aser, and it still works. So Rav Yehuda holds like Rav Yaakov, for Rav Shimon, and Rav Shimon who says there's no such thing as making a Nazir Shimshon, because Shimshon never made himself a Nazir. So if someone says he's a Nazir Shimshon, he's not making a Neder b'davar ha-Nadir. Savar lo Rav Yosi, Da'amar be'inan davar ha-Nadir. So says the Gemara, let's suggest that the machlokes Rav Yosi and Rav Yaakov is the machlokes Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, and of course we never like the a new machlokes to be arguing in the same machlokes as previous Tanoim, and therefore answers the Gemara about 20 lines down. The first one line is Hanidar Loi. The Kulei Alma, everyone really holds Be'inan Davar Hanidar. Everyone agrees that we need Davar Hanidar. V'shayni gabi bachar, and bachar is different. Why? Why does bachar work if we know, why would it work if someone says, I'm like a Bachar, if everyone agrees that the only way to make a neder is by saying, I'm a neder like something which was created also. So why would Bachar work? Techsev Bey, a special din, it says, La Hashem by Bachar, Le Rabbis as Bachar. For Rav Yosi Amar Lacha, it comes like Rav Yosi who says there's no such thing as becoming a neder like a Bachar. Hahu La Hashem, Yibai Le Rabbis Chatas Va'asham, teaches me a different din, that if someone says, I'm like a Chatas and an Asham, it's going to work. Uma Rai is asked the Gemara, and this sounds familiar, it's good because we had this in the Darim. Uma Rai is Le Rabbis Chatas Va'asham, Ulahoiti as a Bachar. How does Rav Yosi know to include a Chatas and an Asham, and to exclude a Bachar? Says the Gemara, Marbani, excuse me, 1 second, we just lost where we're reading. Yes, this is a little bit of a long Amud, and yes, it is getting late. Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, Marbani chatos ve'asham shekein matfison bin neder, because the Chatas and Asham are similar. Harei zeh Chatas, harei zeh Asham. So it's similar to being matvis. It's similar to creating something with your own mouth. Umoitzani as abachar she'ein matvisin b'neder. So that is how Rav Yosi is going to answer. Rav Yaakov says the Gemara, what does Rav Yaakov do with the fact that it says Allah Hashem, which only should be something which is a davar hanadar, and we know that Rav Yaakov holds Harei like kibachar, yes, makes it also. Amlacha bachar nami matvisa ben nederhu. Bachar is also called matvis ben neder, which obviously is a massive chiddush, because we know bachar is not something that one creates on his own. Bachar is something that is born that way. But says Rav Yaakov, Tanya, he has a source in a Braisa. Says Rav Yaakov, Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Shal Beis Rabbeinu Oimer, from the house of Rabbeinu. How do we know if a Bachar is born within one's flock? Even though it has Kedusha from birth, there still is a mitzvah, a positive commandment to say that this is a Bachar with Kedushas Bachar, Shenemar, he's a Hazachar Taktish. So Rav Yaakov says, even though we have La Hashem, but there still is at some form similar to a Davar Hanadar with Matfis. Rav Yosi Amar Lacha, no. Nei, the mitzvah Laktisha, Yiloi Maktish Lei, Miloi Kadosh. It's true, it's a mitzvah to do it, but at the end of the day, it happens on its own. It flips around the Gemara says, that which we're learning by Bachar is great, but Kabei Nazir Nami Yoksiv LaHashem, which really brings back our original equation. We were trying to equate Nazir to Bachar, and we said, no, Bachar is different. But wait, Nazir is the same LaHashem. Says the Gemara, Ahomi Baile Lechanetanya, the LaHashem by Nazir, we need it for the following Braisa. Amar Shimon HaTzadik, very famous, Miyamai Lechalti, Asham Nazir Tameh. I never ate, says Shimon HaTzadik, from a Nazir, from the carbon Asham of a Nazir who became Tameh Chutz, Me'adam Echad, one time. What happened? Shabbat Alayim Adara, a man came from the south. Yafa Einayim with beautiful eyes, V'toivra, in a wonderful appearance, because of Suduras, Lo Tal Talim, and his wonderful locks of hair. Amarti Lo, Shimon HaTzadik said, I said to this man, Beni, my son, Ma'arahi is L'shachi Sarna, why are you destroying, why are you cutting off your beautiful hair? Amar Li, the man says to Shimon HaTzadik, Roya Yisi Labi, Be'iri, I was a shepherd to my father in the city of Alachti, L'shamayim in Amayan, and I went to draw water from the well, and I looked in the water and I saw my image, and when I saw such a beautiful image of myself, Upachas Yitzri Alai, Yitzhara came upon me, Ubikesh L'tardeni min Ha'olam, and the Yitzhara wanted to destroy me. So we're getting a lesson here. What does one do when he's posed with an incredible challenge? Yitzhara is burning inside of him. What do? You talk back to that Yitzhara. Amarti Leireka, you empty fool. Empty one. What are you getting involved in a world that's not yours? Why are you making yourself beautiful and wonderful, you Yitzhara, in a world that's nothing to do? End of the day, we're worms and maggots, and he continued and he made a shvuah, I'm going to cut off my hair, Shimon HaTzadik gets off v'nishakti al roisha, I kissed him on his head, and amarti loy, ke'moischa yir b'nizim b'Yisrael, like you, and only like you, there should be Nazir min Klal Yisrael alecha, because of Omer. On you says the Torah, Ishkif li nader, lindar neder Nazir lahazir lahashem. That's what the extra LaHashem is referring to. And we're going to stop over here. A wonderful story to end off the day, realizing the utmost kavana, how to fight the Yetzer Hara, what we do with the extra LaHashem by Nazir. And tomorrow we'll pick it up, we're discussing more about the dinim of Nazirus of Shimshon.